there and welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Evelyn. I am a chartered town planner. I'm also a chartered development surveyor, and my mission in life is to get more people into the industry, get people a little bit more knowledgeable about what goes on in development and planning. And so I produce videos on how to pass the APC to become chartered members, debunking a few myths, talking about the industry, etc. So today I thought I would talk about one of the most contentious issues in all of planning, and it's probably the thing that people have heard of the most when it comes to planning, because it's always at the forefront of the political agenda, and that's the green belt. So the green belt is always a topic of discussion, particularly for politicians, and the fact that we're now into an election year. The UK has to have an election at some point in the year of 2024. It is a big talking point for the two major parties of the Conservatives and the Labour government, and it is basically to do with house building and building generally, and whether or not we're building in the most appropriate places. So what is the green belt, first of all? It is an area that surrounds cities. Well, it doesn't have to completely surround, but it is an area around cities in England that was formed in the 1950s through a policy to prevent coalescence. It is a containment policy, so essentially it is to stop cities and large towns merging with one another and to keep green spaces around them. So obviously London has a green belt, there is a green belt around Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds, Liverpool, all the major cities have a green belt. So London's green belt looks like this. As of 2022, it consists of approximately 6,382 square kilometres. This is only in England, remember, of land, and this is equivalent of around 12.6% of all land in the country. 65.5% of that land is agricultural use, and 0.3% of that land is used for residential buildings. So the principles of the Green Belt are actually set out in the National Planning Policy Framework, which is a framework produced by the government to guide on the creation of planning policies for local authorities and for development. So Chapter 13 of the NPPF is all about the protection of the green belt, and it sets out 5 key principles for the purposes of the green belt. These are to check the unrestricted sprawl of large built-up areas, to prevent neighbouring towns from merging into one another, to assist in safeguarding the countryside from encroachment, to preserve the setting and special character of historic towns, and to assist in urban regeneration by encouraging the recycling of existing buildings within town centres. So you could argue that those are all sort of really good aims for having this green belt policy in place. However, part of the reason it is so contentious is because developers want to be building on the green belt, and generally speaking, local policy makers and local decision makers and politicians don't want people building on the green belt. So if the green belt only accounts for 12% of land in England, why are people so keen to build on it? So I think what you've got to remember is that the green belt surrounds major towns and cities in the country. So it's all well and good saying that we can build in areas that are not in the green belt. So there is a term called green field land, which is land that has never been built on, so essentially just agricultural fields. There is a difference between wanting to build on green field land and green belt land. Now, green field land could be a field in the middle of nowhere in rural Lincolnshire or something like that. Green belt land, in fact, might just be a disused old field that is on the fringes of Newcastle. So the reason that people want to build on the green belt is because of its proximity to existing city, existing transport infrastructure, existing jobs, existing housing, allowing people to stay within their communities and their neighbourhood. So many believe that the green belt is actually an environmental designation, but it's actually just what was stated in those 5 policies. It is purely to prevent urban sprawl. And 86% of greenbelt land actually has no additional designations on it. So it's not within a national park or an area of outstanding natural beauty, or it's not a triple SR. Much greenbelt land isn't actually green. It actually has no formal requirement to deliver any benefits to the land that it covers. It just has to be. It has to do nothing. So there are many environmentalists who are wanting to make better use of the green belt, and I do think that this is a really good concept, a really good idea. For example, the green belt around London is being used to mitigate urban heating. However, the problem becomes when we have to look at housing delivery targets. As previously stated, the green belt surrounds areas around major towns and cities where people want to be able to connect into those towns and cities. The prime example is London and the South East, and towns and cities in the South East have some of the largest areas of green belt designations around them, but they also have some of the highest housing targets because obviously there is a massive demand for housing in the southeast of England. An example of this would be Tandridge District Council in Surrey. As of 2022, I believe, has the highest allocation of greenbelt land in all of England at 94% of the council area being allocated as greenbelt because of its proximity to London. However, they also have a housing delivery target of 12,900 homes over the plan period. So there is a real contradiction there of delivering housing in places that people need, not just want it, but need it. People need to be able to have houses in areas that are commutable into London versus the protection of the green belt. There are some schools of thought out there that the green belt should be protected at all costs. This is very much a Conservative idea. I believe that this is what the Conservatives are going forward with in their manifesto as part of the election this year, that they will be protecting the green belt at all costs. However, there are other people who believe that building on the green belt in the appropriate location and for the appropriate form of development can be a really useful way to help with the housing crisis that we're in at the moment. So at present, you are only allowed to build certain types of development on green belt land. These can be used for largely agricultural purposes, so farming equipment and that kind of stuff, barns, these sorts of non-invasive infrastructure needs. The development of land that is not considered appropriate on the green belt must meet what is called the exceptional circumstances test. Are there exceptional circumstances that mean that this development has to be in this exact location? So let's say we're talking about housing here, and a developer comes forward with a development for 500 houses on an area of green belt. Let's go back to Tandridge as our example. So a developer within Tandridge District Council comes forward and states that they intend to build 500 houses on the edge of whatever the major town in Tandridge is, but it's within the green belt. So what they will have to demonstrate is that there is absolutely nowhere else within the borough that they have assessed and excluded every single other site for legitimate reasons, not just because they own the land in this particular location, so that's why they want to do it. There has to be legitimate reason for not using land that is not in the green belt, such as it might have environmental designations or major contamination issues. There has to be a demonstrable need for this. So as I say, Tandridge District Council does have a massive housing requirement, and I believe that they are nowhere near meeting it. So that does work in their favour. And even with all of this, it's not a guarantee. It's actually almost probably still not going to guarantee development in the Greenbelt. Stories of housing development in the Greenbelt are stories. They are not uncommon, but it's certainly not every day. People talk about it when there is a major development that has been allowed in the Greenbelt. As such, this is just further adding to the housing shortage that we have in this country. It's really difficult for people to be able to move out and build new dwellings in areas that we do really need it. I personally think there should be a review of the entire Greenbelt in this country. I completely agree with the concept of the Greenbelt, but I think that an outdated idea from the 1950s is no longer applicable in the economy, in the market, with the demographics of people that we have in this country now. I think there needs to be a review of the Greenbelt, particularly around London, but to be honest, in every single city in England, and an assessment of whether or not it's still fit for purpose and a redrawing of the Greenbelt boundaries. But that's just my view. I'd love to hear what you all think about the Greenbelt. I hope that clarifies a few things for you. Please do let me know if I'm speaking in too much jargon. I'm so guilty, as is every single planner, of speaking almost entirely in acronyms and jargon. So please do let me know, and make sure that you are following over on TikTok, because I post a lot more content over there. Let me know if you have any questions you want to ask about planning, or any topics for any videos in the future you'd like me to discuss more in detail, and just leave me a comment or send me a message and I can get round to that for you. Alright, thanks very much for watching.